My older sister loved telling everyone how I lived a childish life in my small city apartment while she was buying a massive house in the suburbs. I just smiled and told her I was happy for her. She just found out that I, under a secret pseudonym, not only own her entire building, but the three surrounding it, all run from the headquarters she so carelessly dismissed. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The phone call that changed everything came on a Tuesday. I was sitting at my command center, a sleek, minimalist desk with 3 monitors displaying shifting columns of numbers, market analyses, and architectural blueprints. To anyone else, it was just the living room of my modest, one-bedroom apartment in the heart of the city. To me, it was the cockpit from which I piloted my entire life. The phone buzzed, displaying a picture of my sister, Olivia. I took a deep breath, clicked the green icon, and put her on speaker. "Zoe, you will not believe the news," she chirped, her voice dripping with the kind of manufactured excitement she reserved for major life announcements. "Hi, Olivia. What's up?" I said, my eyes still scanning a due diligence report on a commercial property downtown. We got the house," she squealed. "The big one in the Willow Creek Estates. 5 bedrooms, Zoe, a 3-car garage, the backyard is enormous. David is already planning where to put the Stonefire pizza oven." I leaned back in my chair, picturing it. Willow Creek was the newest, most talked-about development in the suburbs. It was a monument to beige-toned luxury, a place where success was measured in square footage and the number of recessed lights in your kitchen. "Wow, Liv, that's huge," I said genuinely. "Congratulations, I know how much you wanted that." "Wanted it? Zoe, it's everything we've worked for," she said, a subtle shift in her tone. The excitement was now tinged with something else, something I knew all too well, pity. It's what being an adult is all about. Setting down roots, building equity in something real, you know. I knew. This was the opening act of a very familiar play. "I'm really happy for you," I repeated, keeping my voice even. "I know you are," she said, her voice softening into a syrupy, concerned coo. "And listen, when we get settled, you have to come stay for a while. A real, proper visit. It would be so good for you to get out of, well, you know." She didn't have to say it. My childish apartment. The place she saw as a holding pattern, a sign of my failure to launch. In her mind, at 32 years old, I was still playing house in a city that was for 20-somethings, clinging to a lifestyle she had gleefully outgrown. "Maybe you could even start looking around here," she continued, her voice gaining momentum as she warmed to her favorite subject, fixing my life. "There are some lovely townhouses not too far from us. It would be a starter home, of course, nothing like ours, but it would be a start. Don't you think it's time you had something to show for all your work?" The way she paused before the word work was a masterpiece of subtle condescension. My freelance data analysis, as I described it to her, was, in her eyes, a cute little hobby that paid my rent and not much else. It was nothing compared to her role as a senior marketing manager or David's prestigious job as a financial advisor. They were the architects of a real life. I was just doodling in the margins. I stared at the central monitor in front of me. On it was the master file for Project Willow Creek. It contained satellite imagery, acquisition costs, contractor agreements, and sales projections. It also contained a list of recent buyers. I scrolled down and saw it, clear as day, Olivia and David Reynolds, 142 Blossom Lane. They hadn't just bought a house in the development. They had bought it from me. Or rather, they'd bought it from AJ Vance, the reclusive, all-male persona I had created 5 years ago. My company, Vanguard Properties, had acquired the entire tract of land 2 years ago and built the whole subdivision from the ground up. Her dream house, the symbol of her adult success, was just another line item on my balance sheet. "Zoe, are you there?" Olivia's voice cut through my thoughts. "Did you hear what I said?" I took a slow, steadying breath, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. I could tell her right then. I could shatter her perfectly constructed world with a single sentence. "Congratulations on your purchase, Olivia. The check just cleared in my account." The temptation was a physical ache in my chest. But it wasn't time. The foundation of her new life was still setting, and I needed her to feel completely, unshakably secure on it before I showed her that the grew. ND she stood on was mine. "I'm here," I said, my voice unnervingly calm. "I heard you, and I'm happy you have so much space." The silence on her end was brief but telling. She had expected a defense, an argument, maybe even a sad admission of her superiority. My simple, unbothered acceptance threw her off script. "Well, okay," she said, recovering. "Anyway, I have to go. We're picking out granite countertops. Talk soon." The line went dead. I swiveled in my chair and looked out the large window of my apartment. The city sprawled out before me, a glittering tapestry of lights and ambition. My sister saw this as a small cage. She had no idea it was my kingdom. The phone call wasn't an insult. It was an invitation. She had just invited me to the grand opening of my greatest investment. The betrayal wasn't in her words, but in the 5 years of secrets I had kept from her. For a long time after the call, I just sat there, listening to the hum of the city. The noise was a comfort, a constant reminder of the vibrant, complex world that Olivia saw as nothing more than a stepping stone to the silent, manicured lawns of the suburbs. Her pity, usually a dull annoyance, had sharpened into something that felt like a physical sting. It wasn't just that she thought I was failing, it was that she was so smugly certain of it. I stood up and walked to the kitchen, a small but efficient space with stainless steel appliances and dark wood cabinets. I poured myself a glass of water, my hand steady. On the outside, I was the picture of calm. Inside, a storm of emotions was raging. There was anger, of course, a hot, flashing resentment at being so profoundly underestimated by my own sister. But beneath it was a deeper, more complicated current of hurt. We had grown up as allies, two sisters against the world. When had she started seeing me not as her partner, but as her project? When had my life become a benchmark against which she measured her own success? A notification popped up on my phone. It was a picture message from Olivia. It showed her and David, beaming, standing in the cavernous, unfinished frame of their new living room. They were holding a bottle of champagne, their faces glowing with victory. The caption read, "The future, so much room for activities." It was a line from a movie we both loved, a silly inside joke from our childhood. But now it felt different. It felt like she was weaponizing our shared past to highlight the perceived poverty of my present. "Look at my huge future. Look at your tiny now." I stared at the photo, at the proud, proprietary way David had his arms slung around Olivia's shoulders. They looked like conquering heroes who had just claimed a new land. My land. I saved the image to a private folder on my computer labeled Motivation. My gaze drifted back to my desk, to the 3 glowing screens that held the truth of my life. For 5 years, I had lived a double existence. By day, to my family, I was Zoe Reynolds, the quiet, bookish data analyst who worked from home and seemed content with a simple, uncluttered life. But in the digital realm, and in the high-stakes world of real estate investment, I was AJ Vance. AJ Vance was a ghost, a legend in the making. He never attended meetings in person. He communicated only through encrypted emails and his stern, incredibly efficient lawyer, Sarah. He was known for his uncanny ability to predict market trends, his aggressive acquisition strategies, and his complete anonymity. The business world speculated that he was an eccentric tech billionaire or an old money scion who shunned the spotlight. No one ever suspected he was a 32-year-old woman running a multi-million-dollar empire from a 700-square-foot apartment. The pseudonym had been a necessity at first. When I started, fresh out of business school with a small inheritance from our grandmother, I was met with skepticism and condescension. Young women in real estate development were expected to be agents or designers, not principals. So, I created AJ, an unimpeachable, faceless man of authority. And it worked. Doors that had been closed to Zoe swung wide open for AJ Vance. Over time, the persona became more than a tool, it became a shield. It protected me from the judgment of people like Olivia. It allowed me to build my dream without having to defend it every step of the way. I sat back down at my desk and pulled up Olivia's file. Her mortgage application, her financial disclosures, her credit report, it was all there. David's income was solid, but they were leveraged to the hilt. Their debt-to-income ratio was alarmingly high. This house wasn't just a home, it was a gamble, a massive, beautifully packaged risk. They had poured every last cent and a significant amount of borrowed money into this shrine to their success. A cold, hard resolve began to crystallize within me, displacing the hurt. Olivia wanted me to see her new house as the ultimate symbol of her achievement. Fine, I would. I would let her host her parties, arrange her furniture, and plant her garden. I would let her believe with every fiber of her being that she had won the silent competition she had created between us. And when the time was right, I would show her who had built the stadium. I looked back at the city skyline. They saw my life as small and confined. They looked at my apartment and saw walls. They had forgotten one crucial thing about me. I had always been the one who built the walls. To understand Olivia, you have to understand the chipped teacup. It sat on a shelf in our mother's kitchen for our entire childhood. It was part of a fancy set, porcelain so fine you could almost see through it, with a delicate pattern of blue flowers. One day, when Olivia was 9 and I was 6, she accidentally knocked it off the counter. A tiny, hairline crack appeared near the handle, and a minuscule chip broke off the rim. Our mother was devastated. Olivia burst into tears, terrified of the trouble she was in. I, seeing her distress, immediately piped up. "I did it, Mom," I lied. "I was trying to reach the cookie jar." I took the punishment, a week without television, without a word of protest. Later that night, Olivia crept into my room. "Why did you do that?" she whispered in the dark. "Because we're a team," I whispered back. "Sisters have to protect each other." She never forgot that I took the blame, but I think she learned the wrong lesson. She didn't learn about loyalty, she learned about the value of a flawless appearance. From that day on, her entire life became an exercise in avoiding cracks and chips. Everything had to be perfect, pristine, and presentable. Her grades, her friends, her clothes, and eventually, her career, her husband, and her house. Any imperfection, in her life or in the lives of those around her, was a threat to be managed or eliminated. And I, with my quiet, unconventional life, was a glaring imperfection. Her condescension wasn't a new development. It was a slow-growing vine that had been strangling our relationship for years. When I chose to major in business analytics instead of something more prestigious, like law, she'd sighed. "But what does that even mean, Zoe? It sounds so technical." When I took the modest inheritance from our grandmother and invested it instead of putting a down payment on a sensible condo, she was openly critical. "It's a bit of a waste, don't you think?" She'd said over a family dinner. "Property is the only sure thing. David says the market is ripe for entry-level buyers." David, he was the perfect accessory to Olivia's perfect life. A financial advisor with a gleaming smile, a firm handshake, and an unshakable belief in his own expertise. He and Olivia were a formidable team, constantly reinforcing each other's worldview. They spoke in a private language of mortgage rates, stock portfolios, and school districts, their conversations a public performance of their own competence. I remember visiting them in their old house, a perfectly nice 3-bedroom colonial that was, by any normal standard, a lovely home. But to them, it was a starter. During the visit, David had cornered me in the kitchen, swirling a glass of red wine. "So, Olivia tells me you're still renting," he said, his tone a blend of curiosity and diagnosis, as if I were a patient with a curious ailment. "You know, Zoe, from a financial perspective, you're essentially just throwing money away. Every month, that's a payment you could be putting towards your own equity. It's the foundational principle of wealth building." "I'm comfortable where I am," I had replied politely. "My overhead is low, and it gives me flexibility." "Flexibility is for your 20s, he'd countered, taking a sip of his wine. Your 30s are for building a foundation. You don't want to wake up at 40 and have nothing to show for it but a collection of rent receipts, do you? The conversation was a perfect snapshot of their philosophy. To them, success was tangible. It was something you could park in a driveway or host a dinner party in. My life, lived largely inside my head and on my computer screens, was abstract and therefore meaningless. They couldn't see it, so it didn't exist. My childish apartment was the focal point of their concern. It was in a converted warehouse building, with high ceilings, exposed brick, and a massive industrial window that overlooked the downtown core. It was, in my opinion, beautiful. To Olivia, it was a phase. "It's just so transient," she declared during her last visit, running a finger along my reclaimed wood dining table as if checking for dust. "And it's so small. Where do you put things? Don't you want a guest room? A proper dining room? A place to entertain?" "I entertain," ID said, gesturing to the two comfortable chairs opposite my sofa, "just on a smaller scale." She had exchanged a look with David, a quick, silent communique. Aishan that said, "See, she doesn't get it." Their new house in Willow Creek was the culmination of this lifelong pursuit of flawlessness. It was their magnum opus, the ultimate testament to their superiority. It wasn't just a home, it was a fortress of validation, designed to keep out the messy, unpredictable world and prove, once and for all, that they had made all the right choices. And by extension, that I had made all the wrong ones. The more they inflated their own success, the more my quiet life seemed to shrink in comparison. It was a narrative they had carefully crafted, and until now, I had let them write it. The acquisition of the land that would become Willow Creek Estates was codenamed Project Nightingale. It began not as a grand plan to ensnare my sister, but as a cold, calculated business decision made from my desk overlooking the city. The irony that Olivia would walk right into the center of it was a plot twist I could never have written myself. My strategy for Vanguard properties was simple: find undervalued, overlooked, or underdeveloped land in areas poised for growth. I didn't chase trends, I anticipated them. My days as a freelance data analyst weren't a cover, they were my training ground. I built proprietary algorithms that scraped municipal planning documents, zoning applications, demographic shifts, and economic forecasts. While other developers were chasing prime downtown real estate, my data was pointing me towards the sleepy, semi-rural county just outside the suburban sprawl. The land was a 200-acre parcel of forgotten farmland owned by an elderly couple ready to retire. To most, it was just empty space. To my algorithm, it was a goldmine. It was situated right in the path of a planned highway expansion and zoned for a new top-tier school district. The city was growing, and it was only a matter of time before the suburbs pushed outwards. This wasn't just land, it was the future. This was where being A.J. Vance was critical. A young woman trying to secure funding and permits for a project of this scale would have been laughed out of the room. A.J. Vance, the mysterious investing savant with a portfolio of quiet successes, was taken very seriously. My investigation was a multi-front operation. Through my lawyer, Sarah, I negotiated the land purchase. Sarah was one of the few people who knew my secret. A sharp, no-nonsense corporate lawyer in her 50s, she was more of a partner than an employee. She was my public face, the iron hand that executed A.J. Vance's vision. "Are you sure about this one, Zoe?" She had asked me over a secure video call, her face skeptical. "It's our biggest play yet. The infrastructure costs alone are massive." "The data is unequivocal, Sarah," I'd replied, pointing to a graph on my screen. "In 5 years, this area will be the most desirable real estate outside the city. We get in now, we control the entire market." While Sarah handled the legalities, I became a ghost, walking the land on weekends, dressed in hiking boots and a plain jacket. I studied the topography, the water tables, the way the sun fell across the fields at different times of day. I designed the layout of the development myself, sketching it out on a tablet. I didn't want a cookie-cutter subdivision. I wanted a community with green spaces, walking trails, and houses that felt distinct. My apartment transformed into a war room. The walls were covered in maps and blueprints. My server hummed day and night, processing construction bids and supply chain logistics. I was a general commanding an army of contractors, architects, and engineers, all from my 700-square-foot fortress. I vetted every builder, approved every material, and named every street. Blossom Lane, where Olivia now lived, was named after my grandmother's favorite tree. The clever trap, as it were, was never intended as one. It was simply a result of my meticulous nature. The entire Willow Creek development, every house and plot of land, was legally owned by a series of subsidiary LLCs that all traced back to the parent company, Vanguard Properties. It was a standard asset protection strategy, creating firewalls between projects. The home ownership documents Olivia and David had signed were technically a 99-year lease on the land with the right to the structure, a common practice in master-planned communities that gives the developer long-term control. They owned the house, but I owned the ground it stood on. They were residents, but I was the ruler of the domain. I remember the day the first real estate listings for Willow Creek went live. I watched the flurry of online activity, the virtual tour, the breathless blog posts from local real estate agents. It was an immediate sensation. It was exactly what the market wanted: aspirational, safe, and brand new. It never once occurred to me that Olivia and David would be among the buyers. They lived on the opposite side of the city, and Olivia had always professed a love for established neighborhoods with character. When she first mentioned they were looking at some new builds, I thought nothing of it. When she finally announced they'd bought a house in Willow Creek, the sheer, poetic absurdity of it took my breath away. She hadn't just bought a house. She had unknowingly, enthusiastically, and with a great sense of superiority, bought a product of my own creation. The ultimate validation of my childish life was her signature on a mortgage document that would ultimately land on my desk. The invitation arrived a week after the phone call. It wasn't a text or an email. It was a thick, cream-colored card hand-delivered by Olivia herself. My intercom buzzed on a Thursday afternoon, her voice, bright and insistent, crackling through the speaker. "Zoe, it's me. Let me up." I buzzed her in, my heart doing a little nervous flutter. A confrontation was inevitable, but I wasn't expecting it to come to my doorstep so soon. I straightened a stack of papers on my desk, turning one of the monitors to a generic screensaver. Olivia swept into the apartment like a conquering general inspecting a newly captured outpost. Her eyes did a quick, critical scan of the space, a faint, practiced smile on her lips. She was dressed in what I privately called her suburban mom uniform: crisp white jeans, an expensive-looking striped sweater, and pristine white sneakers. "Zoe, honey, you look tired," she said, kissing the air next to my cheek. It was her standard opening remark. "I'm fine, Liv, just busy with work," I said, gesturing for her to sit. She perched on the edge of my sofa as if it might be contaminated. "Well, that's why you need a break," she said, pulling the card from her designer handbag. "We're having a housewarming party, a week from Saturday. I wanted to give you this in person." I took the invitation. The paper was heavy, the lettering a fancy gold script. "Celebrate with Olivia and David as they begin their new chapter at 142 Blossom Lane, Willow Creek." "It's going to be a big affair," she continued, not waiting for my response. "We've invited everyone. All of David's partners from the firm, my whole marketing department, all our friends. It's the perfect way to christen the new place." "It sounds lovely," I said, placing the card on my coffee table. Her eyes followed the movement, then drifted around the room again. "You know, this place has character," she said, the word hanging in the air like a polite insult. "But don't you ever feel closed in? When I'm at the new house, I just stand in the living room and I can breathe. There's just so much light, so much air." She stood up and walked to my large window, the one that I loved. "I mean, this view is something, I guess, if you like looking at concrete." She turned back to me, her expression softening into that familiar, pitying look. "I worry about you, Zoe, in this little box. It's not healthy to be so isolated. Olivia, I'm not isolated. I'm happy here, I said, my voice firmer than I intended. Are you, she challenged, her head tilted. Or are you just saying that because you think this is all you can have? Before I could answer, she picked up a stray document from a pile on my side table. My blood ran cold. It was a final approval report for the community landscaping plan. The header was clearly visible. Vanguard Properties, Project Nightingale. What's this? She asked, her brow furrowed in mild curiosity. Vanguard Properties? David mentioned them. He said they're some super aggressive investment firm run by a total recluse. Apparently, they own all of Willow Creek. He says their contract terms are ironclad. A bit predatory, he thinks. I held my breath. This was it. A tiny, insignificant crack in the facade. I summoned every ounce of calm I possessed. Oh, that's just some freelance work, I said, getting up and gently taking the paper from her hand, my movements casual. A client of mine is a contractor doing some work for them. I was just reviewing the data on the project scope. The lie was smooth, plausible. It fit perfectly into the box she had built for me. Of course, I wouldn't be the owner. I'd be a low-level peon working for someone who worked for someone else. Her face cleared instantly. Oh, I see. Well, be careful. David says the guy who runs it, AJ Vance, is a real shark. She shuddered theatrically. I'm just glad we have our own little piece of it and we don't have to deal with the big, bad landlord. She smiled, completely oblivious. She had held the proof in her hand and had not seen it. She had looked at the name of my company, the name of my alter ego, and had woven it into her own narrative of my small, insignificant life. So, she said, her mission accomplished. You'll be there, the party. I wouldn't miss it for the world, I said, and I meant it. She gave me one last, lingering look of concern, then swept out of the apartment, leaving. The scent of her expensive perfume and the heavy weight of her judgment behind. I stood there for a moment, the landscaping report still in my hand. The confrontation had happened, but only I knew it. She had walked through the heart of my empire and seen nothing but a tiny, childish apartment. The stage was now perfectly set. The week leading up to the housewarming party was one of the longest of my life. The decision to reveal the truth had been made, but carrying the secret felt heavier than ever. Every interaction, every text message, every shared family photo in our group chat was layered with a new, sharp-edged irony. Olivia was in full hostess mode. She sent daily updates, pictures of the new oversized sectional sofa being delivered, polls about what kind of signature cocktail she should serve, a breathless video of David assembling a complicated gas grill on their new stone patio. Each message was a little testament to her happiness, and each one felt like another brick in the wall of her delusion. The stakes felt immense. This wasn't just about surprising my sister, it was about fundamentally altering our family's dynamics forever. My parents, who adored Olivia's picture-perfect life, would be caught in the crossfire. Olivia's carefully curated social circle, the one she was so eager to impress, would be the audience for her spectacular humiliation. And our relationship, the one I still cherished from our childhood, would either be shattered beyond repair or be reforged into something new and terrifyingly honest. I found myself pacing my apartment, unable to focus on work. The numbers on my screens blurred together. AJ Vance was cool, calculating, and detached, but Zoe Reynolds was a nervous wreck. On Wednesday, I scheduled a video call with Sarah, my lawyer. I needed an anchor, a dose of the pragmatism that I was struggling to find in myself. You look like you're about to argue a case before the Supreme Court, she said the moment my face appeared on her screen. Her office was behind her, lined with imposing law books. It feels like it, I admitted, running a hand through my hair. Sarah, am I doing the right thing? From a legal perspective, she said, her voice dry, you have every right to attend a social gathering at a property you own. From a personal perspective, Zoe, she has been treating you like a charity case for years. She looks down on you, she pities you, and she does it publicly. You have built an empire through sheer brilliance and hard work, all while she was patting you on the head and telling you to get a real life. When is it ever the wrong time to stand up for yourself? But the fallout. What fallout? She countered, leaning forward. Her embarrassment, her friend's gossip, David having to admit he didn't do his due diligence. Those are not your problems. You have let her control the narrative for a decade. All you're doing is presenting the facts. She can choose to react however she wants. Her words were like a splash of cold water. She was right. I wasn't planning an act of revenge, I was planning an act of truth. The consequences were hers to manage, not mine to fear. I just want her to see me, I said quietly, for who I really am. Then let her, Sarah said, her expression softening. Let them all see. We spent the next hour going over the plan, not as a legal strategy, but as a theatrical one. We prepared a digital folder on my phone, accessible with a single tap. It contained the deed of ownership for Willow Creek, the articles of incorporation for Vanguard Properties with A.J. Vance listed as sole proprietor, and a link to the secure portal where I managed the entire operation. It was an irrefutable digital mic drop. The final push came on Saturday, just hours before the party. My phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. Hey, so excited for tonight. BTW, the dress code is smart casual. Just wanted to give you a heads up so you don't show up in, you know. See you soon. I stared at the message, the casual cruelty of it, the winking emoji that was meant to soften a blow it only sharpened. So you don't show up in, you know. My usual attire of jeans and simple sweaters. My childish clothes to go with my childish apartment. She was still trying to produce and direct me, right down to my costume. That was it. The last shred of doubt evaporated. My nervousness was replaced by a cold, clear sense of purpose. I walked to my closet and pushed aside my everyday clothes. At the very back, in a garment bag, was a dress I had bought for a real estate awards gala I had planned to attend as myself before losing my nerve and sending Sarah instead. It was a simple, elegant sheath dress in a deep sapphire blue. It was understated but impeccably tailored, the kind of dress that didn't shout for attention but commanded it through its sheer quality. I paired it with classic pumps and the simple, timeless watch our grandmother had left me, the same GR. Grandmother, whose inheritance had been the seed of my entire company. As I looked at my reflection, I didn't see Zoe the data analyst or even AJ Vance the tycoon. I saw a woman who was finally ready to integrate her two halves. Tonight, I wasn't going to the party as the pity project little sister. I was going as the owner, and I was going to collect the rent. Driving to Willow Creek felt like crossing into another country. The familiar, chaotic energy of the city receded in my rearview mirror, replaced by the serene, almost sterile perfection of the suburbs. As I turned onto Blossom Lane, I had to suppress a wry smile. The landscaping, which I had approved via a spreadsheet, looked immaculate. The sapling trees, chosen from a catalog, were all standing at perfect attention. It was exactly as I had designed it, a flawless illusion of established prosperity. I parked my sensible sedan between a massive SUV and a luxury sports car and took a moment to compose myself. Through the large, brightly lit windows of 142 Blossom Lane, I could see a crowd of people mingling, laughing, holding glasses of wine. It was showtime. The moment I stepped through the front door, Olivia rushed to greet me. "Zoe, you made it," she exclaimed, her eyes doing a quick, surprised appraisal of my dress. "Wow, you cleaned up nice." It was meant as a compliment, but it landed like a backhanded slap. "Hello, Olivia," I said, my voice even. "The house is beautiful." "Isn't it?" she beamed, grabbing my arm and pulling me into the throng. "Everyone, this is my little sister, Zoe." She introduced me to a blur of faces, smug-looking men in expensive shirts and women with identical blonde highlights. To each of them, she gave a little curated summary of my life. "This is Zoe. She's a data analyst, lives right in the city. Super smart, our little bookworm." I smiled, shook hands, and endured the polite, disinterested questions about my cozy city life. I felt like an exhibit in Olivia's Museum of Success, and here we have the struggling urban sibling. Notice her quaint, unmortgaged existence. The house was cavernous. The ceilings soared, and the open-plan living area was filled with brand-new, oversized furniture. It was impressive in scale, but felt impersonal, like a display in a high-end furniture store. David was holding court by the massive kitchen island, explaining the nuances of the stock market to a captive audience. He caught my eye and gave me a little wave, a gesture that was both welcoming and dismissive. I found a quiet corner, accepted a glass of sparkling water, and simply observed. I listened to the conversations around me. They were all about promotions, vacation homes, private school admissions, and most interestingly, the neighborhood itself. "The developer who built this place is a genius," one of the men said, gesturing with his wine glass. "Bought the land for a song before the highway expansion was even announced." "My broker told me he's a total enigma," a woman added. "Some guy named AJ Vance. Apparently, he's never seen in public, sends his lawyer to do all the dirty work." David, ever the expert, chimed in. "He's a shark, that's what he is. Their residents' association agreement is airtight. The fees are steep, and Vance's company has final say on everything, right down to the color you can paint your front door. It's a bit tyrannical, if you ask me." Olivia, who had just joined the group, laughed. "Oh, David, don't be so dramatic. It's for the good of the community. It keeps our property values high. And who cares about some mysterious landlord? We have our dream house. That's all that matters." She looked over at me then, a wide, triumphant smile on her face. This was her moment. She was surrounded by her friends, in her perfect house, the queen of her castle. She decided it was time for the grand finale of her favorite play. "Just look at all this space," she said, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "It makes me sad thinking of my poor sister Zoe, cooped up in her tiny apartment in the city. I keep telling her, it's so childish to still be renting at her age. I try to help her to give her advice, but, well, she likes her little nest." The group turned to look at me. Their expressions were a mixture of pity and polite discomfort. The air crackled with tension. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the one I had both dreaded and craved. All the years of being underestimated, of biting my tongue, of quietly building my empire while she loudly built her facade, it all came down to this. I took a slow sip of my water, my hand perfectly steady. I set the glass down on a nearby table with a soft click. "You're right, Olivia," I said, my voice clear and calm, cutting through the chatter. The group fell silent. "You do have a lot of space." I paused, letting the silence stretch. I had their full attention. "You also have a significant issue with the Southern Foundation on this." "Lot," I continued, my tone conversational. "The soil composition has a high clay content, which is why I mandated the use of reinforced concrete footings that go 4 feet deep. I hope the contractor followed the specs. I'll have to check the inspection reports on Monday." A confused silence descended upon the group. David frowned. "What are you talking about, Zoe? How would you know that?" I turned my gaze to him. "Because I commissioned the geological survey myself, David, before I approved the master plan for the development." Olivia let out a short, nervous laugh. "Zoe, what is this? Did you read a pamphlet or something? Stop being weird." "It's not weird, Olivia. It's my job," I said. I reached into my purse and took out my phone. With a single tap, I brought up the folder Sarah and I had prepared. "You're right about the Residents' Association agreement being tyrannical," I said, looking at David. "I wrote it. I've found it's the most efficient way to maintain brand integrity across a portfolio." I then turned my phone screen towards him. On it, in crisp PDF format, was the ownership deed for the entire 200-acre tract of land known as Willow Creek Estates. The owner was listed as Vanguard Properties. David's jaw went slack. He stared at the screen, his face paling. That's not possible." "And as for the mysterious, reclusive shark, AJ Vance," I said, my voice unwavering as I swiped to the next document, the Articles of Incorporation. I pointed to the name listed as founder and sole proprietor. You can just call me Zoe. AJ stands for Andrea Zoe. It's our grandmother's name. I thought it was a fitting tribute since her inheritance started the company. A collective gasp went through the small crowd. Olivia stared at me, her face a mask of pure, uncomprehending shock. Her perfect smile had vanished, replaced by a gaping void. "No," she whispered. "No, you're lying." "Am I?" I said softly. I swiped one last time to the login page of the Vanguard Properties Management portal. I entered my credentials and the dashboard bloomed to life, a complex interface showing financials, project statuses, and resident accounts. I typed 142 Blossom Lane into the search bar. Their file appeared instantly: mortgage details, payment history, and a scanned copy of the lease agreement they had signed. My tenants. I held the phone out for her to see. "The house is lovely, Olivia. You and David have been excellent clients so far. Your first mortgage payment is due on the 1st. Please don't be late." The silence in the room was absolute. It was so quiet I could hear the hum of the brand new refrigerator. Olivia looked from the phone to my face, her eyes wide with a dawning, catastrophic horror. The world she had so carefully constructed, the narrative of her success and my failure, had not just been cracked, it had been vaporized. She wasn't the queen of the castle. She was a tenant, and her childish little sister was the one who owned the kingdom. For a long moment, nobody moved. The guests looked like a collection of statues, their faces frozen in various states of shock and confusion. David was sputtering, opening and closing his mouth like a fish, but no words came out. He, the financial expert, had been exposed as having done less due diligence on his largest personal investment than his sister-in-law had on her weekly groceries. Olivia's face went through a rapid, painful series of transformations. Shock gave way to disbelief, disbelief to a dawning, horrified comprehension, and comprehension to a hot flush of utter humiliation. Her big night, her grand debut as the lady of the manor, had turned into her public unmasking. She finally found her voice, but it was just a choked whisper. I don't understand." "I know," I said, and for the first time I felt a pang of something other than vindication. It was a flicker of the old, protective instinct. I hadn't done this to hurt her, but to stop her from hurting me. "We can talk about it later, privately." I turned to the stunned onlookers, gave them a polite, small smile, and said, "It was lovely to meet you all. Thank you for the invitation, Olivia, David." With that, I walked out of the house, my back straight, my heels clicking softly on the brand new hardwood floors. I didn't look back. The drive home was a blur. My mind was quiet, strangely peaceful. I had detonated a bomb in the middle of my family, and yet I felt a profound sense of calm. The weight of the secret, a burden I hadn't even realized I was carrying, was gone. The flood of messages began before I was even halfway back to the city. My parents, confused, my aunts and uncles, demanding an explanation, and a string of frantic, incoherent texts from Olivia. "You have to call me." "What was that?" "This is a joke, right? Some kind of sick joke." "How could you do this to me?" I didn't answer. I turned my phone on silent, went back to my apartment, made myself a cup of tea, and sat by my favorite window, watching the city lights flicker to life. For the first time in years, the view felt entirely my own. 3 days later, my intercom buzzed. It was Olivia. Her voice was small, stripped of all its usual confidence. "Zoe, it's me. Can I please come up?" I let her in. The woman who stood at my door was someone I barely recognized. Her hair wasn't perfectly styled. She wore no makeup. She was dressed in a simple sweatshirt and leggings. She looked deflated, all the air taken out of her. She walked into my apartment and for the first time seemed to truly see it. She looked at my desk with its 3 monitors, the maps on the wall, the shelves of business books. Her eyes, wide and searching, finally landed on me. "Is it all true?" she asked, her voice trembling. I nodded, yes. She sank onto my sofa, the one she had once perched on so disdainfully, and buried her face in her hands. A dry, ragged sob escaped her. "All this time," she mumbled into her palms, "all this time I was pitying you." "I know," I said softly, sitting in the chair opposite her. She looked up, her eyes red. "Why didn't you tell me? Why did you let me go on like that, looking down on you, treating you like a child?" "Because I tried to tell you in 100 different ways," I said, my voice gentle but firm. "I tried to tell you I was happy. I tried to tell you my life was fulfilling. But you didn't want to hear it. You needed me to be small so you could feel big. Anytime I showed a spark of something you didn't understand, you dismissed it. So I just stopped trying. I built my life in private, where it was safe from your judgment." The truth hung in the air between us, raw and painful. "The house," she whispered, "our dream house, it's yours." "The land is mine, Olivia," I corrected her. "The house is the result of your and David's hard work. You earned it. You just happened to buy it from my store." She was quiet for a long time, just staring at her hands. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. "I'm so sorry, Zoe, for everything, for being a terrible sister, for being so blind. I was so wrapped up in my own insecurities, in proving I was successful, I made you the casualty of my own ego. I'm so ashamed." It was the most honest thing she had said to me in 15 years. The apology was real, stripped of all performance. It was the sound of a cracked teacup finally admitting its flaw. "I know," I said, "and I accept your apology. But Olivia, this changes things. It has to. I can't be your little sister project anymore. I need you to be my sister, my equal." Tears streamed down her face now, but they were quiet tears of release. She nodded. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." The path to rebuilding our relationship would be long and complicated. Trust and respect, once broken, are not easily mended. But as she sat there in my childish apartment, finally seeing me for who I was, I felt a flicker of hope. She had walked into my world, and in doing so, had shattered her own. Now, maybe, we could start to build a new one together, on level ground. After she left, I stood by the window for a long time, watching the endless, intricate dance of the city below. My apartment no longer felt like a fortress or a secret headquarters. It just felt like home. A place where Zoe Reynolds and all that she was could finally, peacefully exist.